It is time to go live. And it's good to see y'all this Friday with This Week in Supervision. We've got a lot to share with you today. And I want to make sure that we get it all in. I want to make sure that we get it all in. But I better get going because you know I get kind of long-winded. 131. Let's get rolling. Let's get rolling. I want to talk to you a little bit about it's kind of almost a piggyback of some of the things that we've been talking about over the past few weeks. You know, we talk about a number of things in supervision. I try to bring that to you for those of you all who are intended who want to be supervisors. It seems like that's that's diminishing as far as the numbers, but there's still opportunities out here for you to be able to get money that you want to earn independently while serving and making a difference in other aspiring clinicians lives. And I love supervision. I mean, we really got into some deep stuff today to where I didn't even get to cover a lot of this because I have about 6 in my group and everybody was just sharing different cases and things like that, or case like situations, because we can't talk about real cases. So anyway, don't want to get off on a tangent, but I want to share with you all a little bit about what we talked about. You won't hear me, to be honest, talk about a lot of ethics and stuff on here because that's kind of boring to me. I do talk about that with my supervisees, but I haven't figured out a way to make that entertaining here for what we're doing here. So I'm kind of giving you a little bit of, anyway. So, yes, I want to, before we get into everything, just give me a quick second. We're going to talk about what we've got going on. Start next week. We've got the supervisor training. If you're interested in becoming a supervisor, jump on in. It's next week. We will teach you what you need to know to get started. And you get the bonus blueprint that helps you to be able to acquire clients to grow your supervision practice. Also, we have the DSM training. Yes, I just love that cover. We got it. I love design. And so we'll be having that on April 30th. Again, this training is required for all clinical social workers. Not this training, but the DSM training is now required for all LICSWs in Alabama. You will need to get that somewhere. We'd love for you to join us. And if you're not able to come live, we've got a self-paced. If you have questions about that, let me know. But this will give you what you need as far as getting those hours. They don't have to be live. And so let us know if you have any questions about that. And if you want to just get information about what we're doing, you need to join Social Workers of Alabama, or maybe even join up with us on Eventbrite. Because if you look at the Eventbrite, we're growing here. We've got about 200 and something people, and that's amazing. Anyway, let's get into the subject matter that y'all came for. We're going to have a free training, I think, next month too. I have to get information in the marketing out on that. So stay tuned and we can email that information to you. All right. And that's free to members of Social Workers Alabama. Let's go. Let's go with what we have for today. So what I like to do a lot of times, you all, is start with questions. Again, here's an example of a question. Oh no, what did I just do? Let me try it again. Here's an example of a question. Oh no. Okay, here we go. Sorry, y'all. You messing up the technology. Question what we went over in supervision. Let's see if you know this question. Which of the following is not considered a criterion for PTSD? Which one is not a criteria? A, trauma. Uh, B, symptoms persisting at least 3 months. C, avoidance of stimuli. D, hypervigilance. Now, what would be your answer? And so that's what we went over. We want our clinicians to be able to have a firm understanding of how to diagnose, and then what to do once you diagnose, because you've got to be able to identify correctly and then correctly treat. All right. And so we went over that. And so, of course, the answer for this one, if you don't know, now you'll know, was let's see, B. B. Okay. Symptoms persisting at least for 3 months. Now, how would you know the answer to that if you didn't know the answer? Well, I can't answer that, but what I can tell you is how to know it for the future. And so I like to use mnemonics. I'm giving y'all game to make your supervision group better, more exciting, and to help yourself For some of you all that's not even in a supervision, you're just watching and saying, hey, I would like to be able to recall that. Because for the most part, I'm able to recall a number of disorders because of these mnemonics that I've learned, because I'm not smart enough to just remember the whole criteria. I think the criteria in my little book for PTSD is like 4 or 5 pages or something, but this sums it up, and I want to show you how. Okay. And so just to keep in mind, the 30 days, you need to have the symptoms at least 30 days to meet criteria for PTSD. Now, what we ask our supervisors, what if it's, a little bit less than 30 days? What are we looking at? And then the answer to that would be acute stress disorder. If the symptoms are kind of similar, then we'll be looking at that, right? Something else I wanted to say about that I'm probably not remembering now, but here is the mnemonic for trauma. So we have T, and I'm gonna show you all how this really sizes up and works really good for you. T is for trauma, okay, and you can read what that means. You would have had to have a trauma according to criteria, all right, to have PTSD. R for re-experiencing it. Okay, you re-experience it in a number of ways. You can have nightmares, flashbacks. You can have what do we have? Nightmares, flashbacks, intrusive thoughts, those type of things. Avoidance. Okay, unable to function. And so we don't have time to go through that. You can read that or pause it and read over it. This is really great. But I want you to see how this works really great for when we're looking at I need my cheat sheet. When we're looking at identifying these criteria, and I don't have my cheat sheet, so I'm gonna have to go off the top of my head because here we go. I'll reference back if I get confused. But what I wanted you to understand is that when you this thing, like, look, let's just go through the criteria. It's pretty long. They summarized it here. But it's much longer when you look into the DSM-5. Now, why this is helpful, this mnemonic, because if you look at T for trauma, criterion A is discussing trauma. It's summarizing it. So basically, you're having a cheat sheet, an outline in your head, which works really good if you're doing podcasts, if you're doing interviews, or if your client just randomly says, "Hey, do you think I have these symptoms? Let me check my DSM. Let me give you the test." Okay, you can do that too. But if you want to look smart, which I like to do, this is a way to do it. A quick cheat sheet in your head. So trauma, exposed to death, exposed to death, threatened death, serious injury, or sexual violence. This whole section, the direct experience of trauma, witnessing firsthand trauma. This whole section, criterion A. If you have trauma in your head, then you got it. You got this whole thing and a whole lot more if you look at the DSM right in the dome. Okay, so B. Okay, let's look at B. The presence of one or more intrusive symptoms associated with re-experiencing it. That's R. R is for re-experiencing it or re-experience. And when you look at criterion B, this is all discussing ways that you will re-experience the situation. And it's just as spelled out in your little mnemonic. It has all the stuff here: intrusive flashback, nightmares, recollections, and these are the things that help with the criteria. Now, or help you to define criteria. So let's go to C. What does C talk about? Ooh, avoidance of stimuli. That's A. T is for trauma, R is for re-experiencing, A is for avoidance. Okay. And so there you have that. Now, D, I get a little confused about that with the mnemonic. You might have to figure out a way to remember that one. But once we get back to E, let's see what E said. There we go with arousal. So that's the other A. Okay, it's at the end of trauma. Doesn't have to be in order, but this one describes arousal and how hypervigilance and how you might have difficulty sleeping. If you understand what arousal is related to PTSD, you'll be able to just cite that off and sound like a genius. Okay, and then we get into F, duration. That is the U. No, that's the M for trauma, because we have T is for trauma, R is for re-experiencing, A is for avoidance. And I mix those A's up, but it doesn't matter as long as you get them both. U is for unable to function, and we'll get to that. And then M is for the symptoms need to be there for a month. And so we would have been able to answer this question if we knew that this mnemonic 1 month, 1 month for symptoms, right? Okay. And so that's how that works, right? So M would be for month in the whole dealy here, right? Okay. And so let's go on and go down a little bit more and see if we so G, the disturbance causes significant distress or impairment in social, occupational, and other interpersonal areas of functioning. So that is really cool because this is talking about the you in trauma. This is talking about the you, and let's go to the you. Uh-huh. Unable to function. This has been changed to it's not interpersonal functioning anymore, and I still can't get it in my head what it is, but um important areas of functioning is the updated. And I need to kind of change that up, okay? Important areas of functioning. All right. And so that would be something that you wouldn't want to know about, okay? And this can help you to quickly make the diagnosis, understand the symptoms just at the top of your head. Okay. And then symptoms are due to that's not in the mnemonic, but I mean, you know that you need to rule out if it's these symptoms are due to medication, substance abuse, and things of that nature. Okay. So we've got a little bit of time, and I'm going to dart through something else that we talked about. Okay. And I'm gonna have to move really fast, right? I gotta move really fast, but I just want to give you a summary of what we discussed, right? And so if you were to let's just go on and if you were to look at this question, this was a question that we gave the group. And it said, you have a male client who recounted, and these are based on real scenarios, okay? Real scenarios. And so this is good stuff. You have a male client who recounted an intriguing experience with a song he deeply enjoyed. Despite having heard the original version before, he decided to explore it once again, only to unexpectedly feel sad and somewhat depressed afterwards. Perplexed by the sudden shift in mood, the client couldn't understand why the song had such an effect on him. That's your client. That's the scenario. That's the situation. What happened to him? What would you do if this was your client? Because they expect us to work miracles, and that's what we get paid to do. A lot of them pay us good money to do that. So how would you assess this situation? What type of questions would you ask to define that? Think for a moment. What would you do? They're saying, look, I just started to get depressed and I can't understand what that was all about. Therapist, help me to understand what that was about. Okay. And so I think that as we have talked about, even with the video from the last session, with these types of situations, many times it's important to somewhat acclimate someone, or well, not acclimate them, but have exposures to the situation. So there's various ways that we can expose somebody to something they've had have encountered that may have been adverse to them. Last week we looked at the young lady was dissociating. She was having some dissociative effects and had become taken on a full identity that was not her own. And the way that they went back to try to get her exposures was they took her to the place where they suspected that certain traumas occurred. Now that's a hardcore way to do it, right? In this situation, what would be an example of how we could take the client back? Now, these are just the approaches, that I'm selecting. There are multiple ways to assess and approach this. As a matter of fact, well, I don't want to get off topic. Let me just stay clued in on honed in on this. So there's multiple ways. So if we were to try to take a look back, how could we try to identify what's going on here? It seems apparent that something happened with that song to where it was tied into something that wasn't pleasant. And if you look at certain situations of trauma, again, I like to use the example that certain people don't like to be in crowds because they may have experienced something in a crowd and it did something, like somebody, like if let's just say someone was raped in a bathroom or something like that, and while they were raped in the bathroom, an alarm, like an ambulance emergency alarm was going off, and and that sound was going on. So now anytime they hear that sound, they have anxiety. again, in these situations, in order for us to understand, we have to go back, and that's difficult a lot of times when you're dealing with trauma. So, so in that situation, we would be exploring, was where that sound was present. In this situation, we would be going, you got to be careful which approach you use, because one approach that you could use that might make that thing live is what's one that may make it really live. One approach you can use is to play that song. And what I'm telling you, if you choose to play that song, you better be ready. You better need to do that at the beginning of the session, because this could be a long session and you want to make sure you're not sending them home in crisis. Okay. So if you're going to play that song, I don't know that I would be brave enough all the time to play that song, especially if it was a fairly new client and I'm trying to still evaluate how they handle stress. Because some people can really go off on the deep end with these types of things, especially if it was very, very traumatic. And it may not even be that deep of a trauma. Okay. And so when you're playing that song, that music, they say it kind of bypasses the frontal lobe of the song. That's way out of scope for me. But to where music has a way of communicating in a way that we can't necessarily stop what it brings. So hearing that song might be very effective. But if you didn't want to use that approach, you might want to maybe bring out the album. So you could search right in the session, go into Google and check out the album and say, hey, does this album cover bring about any memories in any way? But sound of the music, that might be a thing. So it's a few things that we could do to kind of go back and try to find out. Here's some other things to consider. Some follow-up questions that you might ask. Can you describe what about that song made you feel sad? That's a way to stay more in the present without going too deep in the past. Do you think it was the song itself, or do you suspect it might have triggered a memory or emotion relative to something else? Okay. So was it actually the song, or did the song bring about a memory of something that may have occurred? And so that might be something you ask. Could there be something in your current life that you haven't processed yet? Perhaps a stressor. Okay. I might not word it that way. I had this reworded a little bit. Um, who was the artist that sang that song you listen to? So every little detail, as you slowly bring them back, sometimes you don't even want to rush into it. So if you just ask little small things to bring that build, sometimes it really starts bringing them back. And this is kind of almost like an exposure type of technique. Okay, in a sense. All right. Who was the artist? What was it about that song that you particularly liked? Or was there anything? That's what it should be. Was there anything about that song that you particularly liked or disliked? Um, and do you recall what year the song was written? And so in this situation, okay, here's something. So in this situation, in a real life situation, someone was exposed to this, and after kind of processing about the song, they looked at the album, and was able to determine from the looks of the album, the things that were on the album, the afros, the big chairs, the big what do you call them? Feather-like chairs that were made of straw. Um, the vibe with the bell bottoms or whatever, the big thick collars, and things like that. It was able to bring back a vibe. And from there, that person still couldn't understand why it made them sad. So from there, they went and asked their parent, they asked the mother about what was going on. But before they did that, they looked up, and they were able to identify, was able to be processed that, okay, this happened in 1980. Okay. This song came out in 1980. As they processed that the song came out in 1980, then they went for some reason and talked to the mom about the situation. Why would they talk to the mom? Because they couldn't, they're like, why was this time sad? And this is what you help your clients to navigate. Why was this time sad? And they were able to process that what happened at that time was that their mother, that was when a sibling was born, and it was a dark moment for the parent because the parent was near suicidal. So what's that telling you? Let me stop right there. If I'm telling you the parent was near suicidal at that time, we're getting somewhere if we're a therapist. We're getting somewhere. Okay. If the parent was near suicidal at that time because they couldn't go to school, they had to drop out. The baby's father was not involved. Okay. So at that moment, that's telling us something was going bad with the mom. And what usually happens when things aren't happy for the parent? Hmm. Whether it's physical abuse or some other type of form of abuse, usually it's not going to be well for that child. Okay. And so this is where we hit bingo. We're finding out that, hey, this was probably a bad time. How was the time for you and your family, especially with the arrival of the sister? Were there signs that your mother was unhappy during that period? Perhaps this song served as a reminder of a time in your life. Maybe your parents' life wasn't very happy. So this is how we get down to processing stuff. We had time. We're gonna go on and sign off. We try to keep it to 20. If y'all have any questions about any of the trainings or things like that, then come check us out. Just DM me in the chat. We're glad for y'all joining. Y'all have a blessed weekend, and we'll see y'all again next week. Y'all take care. Bye bye.